The National News Desk, locally covered, nationally connected.
The fire burned from the beginning to the end of the mountain on top and then just roared down every street.
Progress threatened on day 7 as the death toll rises in California. Why the risk fires will spread continues tonight. And the deadly Boar's Head listeria outbreak. We look into the report the Department of Agriculture just released. What caused it? Plus, election interference. The sections of former special counsel Jack Smith's report allowed to be released, and when. This is the National News Desk, America's News. Now, I'm Dee Dee Gatton. Thank you for beginning your week with us. Breaking at this hour, 3 fires remain active in Los Angeles County as the death toll over this weekend has risen to 24. That number is expected to rise as officials are now conducting grid searches to find human remains. At least 16 people remain missing. 92,000 people are under evacuation orders as you take a look at the map behind me, and 89,000 are under warnings. But authorities say more orders may go into effect in the coming days. The 2 biggest threats remain the Palisades fire between Malibu and Santa Monica, which is still the largest and least contained, and the Eaton fire is more than a third contained, but still encompassing more than 14,000 acres burned. It has destroyed more than 7,000 structures. The Hearst fire in the San Fernando Valley is almost fully contained. Forecasters predict sustained winds of up to 40 miles per hour and gusts in the mountains of up to 65 miles per hour. The most dangerous day will be tomorrow. Officials say it won't be as severe as last week, but those gusty winds plus the dry air and the drought will not help firefighters in their battle against ongoing wildfires.
With the red flag warning imminent, every one of our fires that's currently active, the containment lines that are not fully contained yet are still a challenge, and it's possible that wind could blow an ember over.
Officials say residents need to stay alert and be ready to evacuate if necessary. Meantime, countless people are already dealing with starting over after losing everything in the fires.
You lost everything, but then so did everybody that you know. So how do you mourn the loss of your life and then also everybody is mourning the loss of it's overwhelming.
Through it all, most Los Angeles schools did open today. Last week, some schools were evacuated and closed because of the wildfires. The entire district was closed last Thursday and Friday, but some schools have been completely destroyed and thousands of families have faced displacement. Help and relief efforts are underway all across the country to help everyone affected. Our parent company, Sinclair Inc., is partnering with the Salvation Army for Sinclair Cares California Wildfires Relief to provide essential meals, fresh water, and supplies to the hardest hit areas. If you want to learn more, scan the QR code on your screen or go to sinclaircares.com. 3 Washington, D.C. police officers are in stable condition in the hospital after being shot this morning attempting to take a gunman into custody. The suspect was killed in an exchange of fire inside a Northeast D.C. apartment building. Police were called to investigate the area after residents heard shots being fired.
Officers responded to the location. When they respond, they encounter the individual. The individual jumps on an elevator and goes to whatever floor. He comes back down, and then he engages the officers and produces a handgun. The officers attempted to take him in custody, and while attempting to take him in custody, he discharges the firearm.
A long list of unsanitary conditions at the Boar's Head processing plant in Virginia contributed to the listeria outbreak over this past summer. The U.S. Department of Agriculture released a report today into their investigation of the deadly outbreak. And according to the agency, among the findings included live and dead insects, mildew, and black and green mold. Last July, Boar's Head recalled millions of pounds of product products. At least 10 people died and 61 others got sick across multiple states. The report called for enhanced government supervision to limit future outbreaks. Judge Eileen Cannon has approved Special Counsel Jack Smith to make public part of the DOJ's report on Donald Trump's involvement with the 2020 election interference case as early as tomorrow. But defense lawyers may appeal to the Supreme Court to keep that from happening. The DOJ says they are not going to publish all of their information publicly, but Judge Cannon will hold another hearing this Friday to determine whether the department can actually release the entire report to Congress privately. The Supreme Court is allowing the state of Hawaii to continue their lawsuits against oil and gas companies. State and local governments claim these companies lied to the public about the dangers of their products and how they impact the environment. They are suing to reclaim monetary damages from extreme and changing weather events. 15 companies had asked the High Court to block those lawsuits. The Biden administration told the justices they wanted the energy companies' appeal dismissed. And city officials in Aurora, Colorado are seeking an emergency order to immediately close the edge of Lowry apartment complex. They say the property presents an immediate threat to public safety after 2 people were kidnapped in December. The armed Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua has been blamed. Here's some of that video captured. 12 people have been charged with kidnapping, burglary, assaults, menacing, and conspiracy in connection with that December attack. 3 more are still at large. And 464 days of war in the Middle East could be coming to an end after months of stalemates and hostage and ceasefire negotiations. A new proposed deal is on the table with significant progress being made. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins in Washington with the latest on where it all stands now.
A midnight breakthrough in negotiations, bringing Israel and Hamas to the brink of a deal to end the war in Gaza.
There is a progress. I said it looks much better than previously.
An official close to the talks telling Reuters these next 24 hours are pivotal. U.S. officials projecting the first signs of real optimism regarding a deal in months.
We are close to a deal, and it can get done this week.
Mediators handed Israel and Hamas the final draft on Monday. The talks taking place in Doha, attended by envoys from the Biden and incoming Trump administration, along with officials from Qatar and Egypt.
I spoke to Prime Minister of Israel yesterday. I spoke to Emir of Qatar today. I look forward to speaking with President Sisi soon. We're pressing hard to close this.
Trump has promised hell to pay in the Middle East if Hamas does not release all the hostages by his inauguration.
If they're not back by the time I get into office, all hell will break out in the Middle East. And it will not be good for Hamas.
Some crediting Trump's threat for breaking the diplomatic stalemate that plagued these talks for months. The deal reportedly includes an exchange of 33 Israeli hostages for Palestinian prisoners and a 6-week pause in fighting, during which Israel will withdraw some troops from Gaza while a final end to the war is worked out. The war has devastated Gaza, creating a humanitarian crisis and causing the deaths of more than 45,000 Palestinians.
It is overdue for the fighting in Gaza to be halted, and the people there who are facing just an egregious humanitarian situation to get more relief.
Around 98 of the hostages taken by Hamas on October 7th remain in Gaza. Israel believes about half could still be alive.
Well, both Biden and the incoming Trump administrations want a deal done before Trump's inauguration on January 20th.
Kayla, this deal is a 3-phase agreement to take place over 42 days. It's reportedly very complex. What can you tell us about the initial phase, should this deal actually become official?
Well, Dee Dee, the hostage releases will start 48 hours after this deal is signed. The first phase includes the release of 33 Israeli hostages, including all living children under 19 years old, all living civilian women, and all living elderly, as well as living female Israeli soldiers. Now, in return, Israel will release 30 Palestinian women and children for every 1 Israeli that's released. If the number of living women and children ends up being less than 33, that number, this is when Hamas will make up the difference with the release of bodies of the deceased hostages. Phase 1 also includes Israel allowing 600 trucks of humanitarian aid per day into the Gaza Strip. Israel will also start troop withdrawal from Gaza. Dee Dee.
Live from Washington, D.C., Kayla Gaskins, thank you. Blue Origin did not launch its New Glenn rocket early this morning as planned. Launch controllers called off the mission minutes before blastoff because of technical issues. Once the countdown clock stopped, crews started draining all of the fuel from that rocket. Blue Origin officials say they need time to fix the issue and no new launch date has been set. A 55-year-old man from Texas was arrested for making online threats against WNBA star Caitlyn Clark. Michael Lewis was taken into custody last night in Indianapolis. Officials say Lewis sent numerous threats and sexually explicit messages to Clark via his social media accounts. Court documents say Clark knew about the threats and began changing her look when in public. Lewis said it was all a joke. He faces 6 years in prison. The weather roller coaster continues this week, coming up where the Siberian Express might bring record low temperatures. Then the heavy weaponry being smuggled to drug cartels in Mexico and the Americans who are being recruited to help them. 3 shot, 1 dead at a restaurant in New Bedford, Pennsylvania. We're going to tell you why locals are shocked and yet not surprised about this tragic news. As we come back on the air right now, winter weather snow alerts across the Great Lakes states as waves of lake effect snow have already begun and are expected to last until at least Wednesday this week. Here's a live look over Erie, Pennsylvania, where it's expected that by time this system is done midweek, another 1 to 2 feet of snow could be on the ground. Also, 20 to 30 mile an hour winds in the area could make it feel like 30 degrees below zero. As actual temperatures go, overnight lows from the Dakotas to Wisconsin and Iowa will drop below zero tonight. Get the down blankets out, while much of the rest of the country outside of Florida will approach or fall below freezing. In his final full week in office, President Biden is proposing new limits on exporting computer chips used to develop artificial intelligence. The goal is to try to maintain what the government thinks is a decent advantage on AI over China. But chip industry executives say the move would also limit access to chips used for video games and hinder data centers and AI products in 120 countries, including Mexico, Israel, and Switzerland. The proposal proposal has a 120-day comment period, so President-elect Trump can decide what he wants to do with it. The Laken Riley Act is set to pass another procedural hurdle in the U.S. Senate tonight. The voting is not final yet. The bill is named after the Georgia nursing student who was murdered by an illegal migrant. It would require federal authorities to arrest illegal migrants accused of theft and allow states to sue the federal government if it fails to enforce immigration laws. It has passed the House, but still faces some Democratic opposition in the Senate. And a new report from the Immigration and Customs Enforcement shows there are as many as 60,000 migrants in the U.S. that could be arrested if the law passes. A final vote in the U.S. Senate could come later this week. With inauguration 1 week away, President-elect Trump hopes to have his cabinet in place shortly after he begins his second term in the White House. That starts with high-profile confirmation hearings kicking off this week, with some controversial nominations up in the air. National correspondent Matt Gelka has a preview.
13 Donald Trump cabinet picks are expected to face senators in confirmation hearings this week and give answers to the American public as they vie for the top positions in the next administration.
President Trump deserves a team early. Chuck Schumer said he wants to make fireworks at the hearings. If that happens, we are going to work around the clock, through the night, through weekends, to make sure we get that cabinet confirmed.
Some of those fireworks might start with nominee Pete Hegseth, a veteran and former Fox News host, tapped to lead the Defense Department. Controversy swirled around Hegseth with allegations of sexual misconduct, mismanagement, and excessive drinking following him as he's been meeting with senators. Hegseth has denied wrongdoing, but Democrats say they need more access to an FBI background check on him that's typically reserved for ranking members.
There is not a job that's more serious and more critical to our national security than Secretary of Defense, and we need a qualified individual in that job. And he just does not seem to have the qualifications. And then on top of that, you look at his personal conduct.
Eyes will also be on Trump's pick for Attorney General Pam Bondi, with her hearing split over 2 days on Wednesday and Thursday. Bondi got the nomination after Trump's first pick, former Congressman Matt Gaetz, dropped out. Democrats are expected to zero in on past comments Bondi made alluding to political retribution, while Republicans look to push her across the finish line.
What President Trump has done is he has selected people who are willing to not move as business as usual, but yet are ready for action. I think people are actually sick of the weaponization. We had this conversation. We talked about politics not being part of the process of what you do in the department.
Senator Marco Rubio will sit for his Secretary of State hearing on Wednesday and is expected to have one of the smoother paths to Senate confirmation. Meanwhile, the hearings for some of Trump's other controversial picks, like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for Health and Human Services Secretary and Tulsi Gabbard for Director of National Intelligence, have yet to be scheduled. Reporting in Washington, I'm Matt Gelka for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
Tsunami advisories have been lifted in Japan following a 6.6 magnitude earthquake. The quake shook a wide area of Japan's southwestern island of Kyushu. There were no immediate reports of damage. A tsunami wave about 3 feet high reportedly made landfall within 30 minutes. Aftershocks are possible within the next 2 or 3 days. Japan is frequently hit by earthquakes due to its location on the Ring of Fire, a belt of volcanoes and fault lines in the Pacific Basin. Walmart is recalling more than 2,000 cases of great value chicken broth due to a packaging problem. Walmart says the issue could compromise the sterility of the product, resulting in spoilage. The broth has been sold in nearly 250 stores across 9 states, including Alabama, Arkansas, Georgia, Louisiana, Missouri, Mississippi, Oklahoma, Tennessee, and Texas. Securing the southern border is a key issue in America, with the national conversation centering on drugs and illegal immigrants crossing into the U.S. But America is also the source of hundreds of thousands of guns flowing south into the hands of violent cartels in Mexico. Spotlight on America got exclusive access to Border Patrol in Laredo, Texas, to see what's being done to stop American-made weapons from supporting the violent groups that threaten our safety.
You're looking at one of the busiest ports of entry in the country. In Laredo, Texas, agents focus every day on preventing drugs like fentanyl or dangerous criminals from coming in. But we got to look at one other crucial part of the job, stopping what's going out.
Some pretty serious firepower there.
Serious firepower like this, seized in Progreso, Texas in June. This batch in Eagle Pass in April, a growing collection of arms almost always headed to the same place, directly into the hands of cartels in Mexico, says Donald Kusser, CBP's Director of Field Operations in Laredo.
Cartels and transnational criminal organizations need a couple things to stay in power, right? They need money and they need weapons.
The flood of weapons so prevalent, journalists and lawmakers alike have referred to it as the Iron River, which flows into a country with just a single gun store located on a military base, coming from a country with some of the most lax laws in the world, which makes it easy for Americans with clean records to be recruited to carry out the purchases, says Alejandro Amaro, Deputy Special Agent in charge for Homeland Security investigations.
If somebody in Mexico needs 15 AK-47s, they'll send out word to their contacts, they'll send money for them, and they'll hire people that have no criminal history, are able to make a purchase.
Those straw purchases, a key reason 500,000 American-made guns are trafficked to Mexico every year. Self-proclaimed cartel members posting videos like this online to show off their haul. Experts say to send a message to both rival gangs and police that they're armed and dangerous. Back in 2016, a police helicopter in southern Mexico was shot down with a .50 caliber Barrett gun. The company is headquartered in Tennessee. It's the same type of weapon members of the military used in Iraq and Afghanistan to hit targets more than 2 miles away. Since that time, nearly 124,000 guns have been recovered at crime scenes in Mexico, more than 83,000 of which came from the United States, often hidden inside vehicles.
So they'll put them in like quarter panels of cars, under seats, within the seats, in the engine compartment, things like that, in the spare tires.
Recovering as many as possible, aided with the use of canines, plus inspection technology or x-rays, essential to national security on both sides of the border.
They would be, if the cartels was able to arm themselves indiscriminately, they would be in further control not only of their city, but it would spill over to the United States.
For Spotlight on America, I'm Christine Frizzau.
Coming up next, the unusual discovery at a new tunnel at the U.S.-Mexico border and the stinky path it went through. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. From neighborhoods burnt to the ground in South Carolina, California, I should say, to a deadly shooting at a restaurant in Massachusetts. We are taking the pulse of America, but we start with a smuggling tunnel found going under the border into Mexico.
dozens of vehicles, mostly from Border Patrol, and a lot of personnel at the scene. Our cameras saw agents in full tactical gear, officers with shovels, pickaxes, and even items placed in evidence bags. Officials told me somebody dug into the El Paso sewer system, building a tunnel in by hand and using some wooden beams. The discovery will draw on law enforcement locally, at the state level, and federally. New video taken from the Juarez side of the border showing Mexican law enforcement also investigating.
That tunnel goes into Ciudad Juarez, comes from Ciudad Juarez into El Paso sector area, right here where we are.
It's shocking, but not shocking at the same time.
Neighbors aren't surprised to learn a shooting happened shortly after 1 o'clock this morning, right here inside the Morna Lounge and Grill on Acushnet Avenue.
I'm not surprised, because anything it can go from a bar fight to a shooting in seconds.
The Bristol County District Attorney's Office says when police arrived, they found 3 people suffering from gunshot wounds, each person in their 20s.
I pray for their families and hope they get better, and the people who have been shot and weren't killed feel better soon.
There's literally nothing left. There's nothing left.
Michael Burton of Altadena is facing heartache like so many in Southern California due to the several major wildfires destroying thousands of buildings.
But our neighbors, when they even let people back into the area, are just going to come back to literally nothing but a chimney and just a pile of ashes.
Burton says there are still mandatory evacuations right now, with crews blocking off entryways into Altadena to keep looters out.
Blanket of depression and sadness has really hit the area. It's all anybody's talking about right now.
Just devastating. Coming up next, for the first time, an NFL playoff game will be played at a neutral site. Why the unexpected host city has been here before. The first NFL coaching vacancy has been filled as another vacancy opens up. Dallas Cowboys head coach Mike McCarthy will not be returning next season. McCarthy is a free agent. ESPN actually says he already is talking to new teams about their openings. One team he won't be headed to will be the New England Patriots. The Patriots finalized a deal to hire former Patriot star Mike Vrabel as their new head coach. The wild card round of the NFL playoffs, it wraps up tonight as the Los Angeles Rams host the Minnesota Vikings in Arizona. I want to show you a live look, or we're working to pull up a live look of State Farm Stadium. That's in Glendale, Arizona. The NFL moved this game due to the fires in Los Angeles County. It's the second time Phoenix has had to do this. In 2003, the Chargers played the Dolphins after wildfires forced the game to move. That's going to do it for us tonight. I'm Dee Dee Gatton. We'll see you tonight.